tough guard. He's going to get his points regardless. You just really have to kind of contain his teammates, because I'm not sure you can really stop Eugene German the year he's had.
I've had a chance to see Eugene German a couple of times, 2014, 2015, when they faced Marquette Catholic both times, and Marquette Catholic had a great scorer at the time by the name of Brian Fazekas. And you talk about Eugene German having a quick first step, unbelievable range, which has just gotten longer since he got to Northern Illinois. You want to talk about a steal of the conference? It is Eugene German.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, go back to that step back. I mean, he elevated. I'm not sure his vertical leap is. It's pretty good, but he just elevated, went back, and it was effortlessly.
Yeah.
But he also can get into you defensively. That's what really impressed me. A lot of guys will play hard at the offensive end, but Eugene was one of those guys that kind of made things happen at the defensive end. They were able to turn Toledo over. I think Toledo had 11 turnovers at halftime, ended up with 19 that game. But that was a big part of that Northern Illinois offense from their defense. But certainly a fun team to watch, and one of many teams that certainly has to have aspirations of winning that MAC tournament and getting into the NCAA tournament this year.
And them having one of the top 4 seeds, as you mentioned, could be a top 2 seed if this pans out the way that it pans out. But looking at Northern Illinois and them having one of the top 4 seeds to get that bye is going to be huge when the tournament comes around to Cleveland.
Yeah, it really is. When you get to Cleveland, you want to have fresh legs. You want to have that bye game and not have to get that play in to get there. But right now, the way things look, I really like Bowling Green. I like Northern Illinois. I like Akron. I like Ball State. I think those are going to be the 4 teams that are going to slip into those byes, and the rest of it's really pretty much going to be a dogfight. And again, I think the MAC teams have won 73% of their home games this season. So you talk about the importance of trying to get a higher seed so you can at least have that home court advantage in that play-in game.
Talk about home court advantage. Look at Akron as we go back to the East. 12-2 at home. Bowling Green 11-1 at home. I mentioned Northern Illinois 9-3. But you want to talk about a team that's got a great home court record but hasn't done great on the road, and they're going to be in the middle of a dogfight. That is Central Michigan, 6-4 in the conference. 11-2 at home, but only 2-8 away from home.
Yeah, that's just hard to believe, that number right there. And that actually one of the losses for Central Michigan was last night. They lost a tough home game to Eastern Michigan by 3 last night. But you have to be able to somehow find a way to sneak some wins in the road, and that's where the Chippewas have really struggled, as you mentioned, 2-8. They're currently on a 2-game losing streak, but that's a team that's awfully dangerous too. They have some solid players, but again, that's what's been so fun about the MAC this year. Any given night, if you don't bring your A game, you're going to be in trouble. Last night, Miami is a team that's really struggled in the MAC. In fact, they were down at OU on Saturday, 34-11, but they came in Toledo last night, a tough place to play. And they really dominated the first half, had a nice lead at halftime, but Toledo was able to come back and pull out a victory. But, that's one of those games where I think most people think, well, Toledo's at home, they're going to win against the Miami team that's really struggling. That's not how it works in the MAC, even though, they've been hurting to get wins there. Miami, they've lost 8 of their last 10. They probably led in that ball game for 30 minutes last night.
Yeah, let's take a look at another team in the East. Mentioned Kent State 6-5. Now let's look at Buffalo 6-5, 15-9 overall. So they have a chance to reach that watermark of 20 wins on the year, but it's really going to depend on how they do in the tournament. What do you see from them, from the University of Buffalo Bulls coming down the stretch?
Well, I think they're going to have to really rely on Javon Graves. He's kind of been their go-to guy all season. That's a team that's kind of fought the injury bug off and on this season, a team that's been banged up. But, if you followed the MAC in recent years, Buffalo is one of those teams where you typically have to go through if you want to have success in the MAC tournament. So certainly nobody's going to discount the Bulls out right now. They're a team that's won 6 of their last 10, so they're kind of starting to find their stride a little bit. And, how they finish is going to be huge. They've lost a few more home games this year. I think they're 8-5 at home this season. But, that's a team that you certainly can't look past. A team that's had a lot of success here, especially in the last, 10, 12 years in the MAC.
Let's look at the Akron Zips. They're a half game behind Bowling Green. They come in 8-3. Bowling Green 9-3. Akron 18-6 overall. They've won their last two. What's kept them afloat? What's kept them in the race for one of the top four?
Well, I tell you what, first of all, they're a well-coached team. They have one of the top players in the league in Lauren Jackson. Right now, the Zips, they've won 9 of the last 12 games. So they're kind of really starting to find their stride there. They also have a guy named Tyler Cheese. He's a solid player, comes in scoring 16 points a game. He's one of those guys that can hurt you in multiple ways. But, that's a team where you really have to guard all 5 guys. It's kind of tough to load up on anybody. So you have to really kind of play them balanced. It's hard to get into them. They handle the ball so well they can hurt you in transition. Again, that's a team that's certainly awfully dangerous. Certainly, they have to believe this could be the year that they get through and not only get to the NCAA tournament, but maybe have a little bit of success there on an NCAA tournament run.
Scoop Miller joining me to talk some college basketball. We took a look at the MAC, and he's going to pop in a little later, and we're going to take a look at another conference that's near and dear to my heart. We like to call it the Big Ten. He'll stop by later. Right now, we're going to pause for a break. Got some more stuff for you when we come back. All right, folks, welcome back to the program as we roll right along here. Don't forget to check out all the festivities and the podcast on my new website, snowmandigitalmedia.com, and the ID you need for Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram is SNW Digital Media. Now, the guest that I have on the line for you, I haven't had this young lady on the line in 2 years. And the last time I had her on, I teased her mercilessly for a good 20 minutes. But we had a great conversation. She and I are two of the busiest people in sports. And if you follow along with what she's doing, you'll understand. She lived out a dream I'm going to make a reality next year. She had a chance to cover the Super Bowl. And I'm going to do that next year in Tampa. And I intend to see her at Raymond James Stadium. The guest I have for you is Miss Kelsey Nicole Nelson of Listen In with KNN, and she joins me right now. How are you, my dear? It's been a while.
Hi, I am great. I cannot believe it's been 2 years. Truly, where does time go?
Man, look, the last time we spoke, you were just getting started in covering Georgetown, and we had a great piece about that. And like I said, she was at the Super Bowl in Miami. You got to take me through that experience. How was that, covering the Super Bowl?
Oh, my gosh. So this is now my second Super Bowl. Atlanta was my first. And it was in Miami, of course. It was like 80 degrees on game day. No coach needed. And then we had a great game. Mm-hmm. So it was like one of the most thrilling experiences because I was down there for 8 days. So you're doing Radio Row, you're doing a bunch of interviews beforehand. Yep. You have stars and celebrities all around you. You're going to different events. You're meeting people. Like, there's nothing like the Super Bowl. Now, I haven't been to NBA All-Star yet. I wanted to go this year, but I'm a bit too busy. So next year, that's on my list when it's in Indy. Yep. But I've heard only NBA All-Star even comes close to the joy of Super Bowl. But Super Bowl is like the most watched game in the entire country, right? So, I mean, nothing compares to that. And it's a fun time. Like, I remember everything, and it's something I think I'll remember until I go down in the grave. Like, it's just one of those things.
When I first had this young lady on the show, it was 2013, and she called on a whim, folks. She called on a whim we had a great conversation then. We've kept in touch. She's been one of my best friends, not just in broadcasting, but in life. It's wonderful to have you on the show. And I have to pay you this compliment. Your program, Listen In with KNN, A, is a favorite of mine. B, I'm a faithful listener.
Yay.
And C, you had me on that program last summer, and it was a blast. Tell me how you got that program started.
Sure. Such a great question. So Listen In with KNN is my baby, my brainchild.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a show I wanted to start it. I thought it was a great way to showcase my personality, showcase my interview skills, and then I really wanted to have a wide range of guests and kind of go outside of the box. And so I've had a lot of great guests come through. It's a fun podcast. We talk about hot topics in sports. We, of course, talk about their background, even touch on controversial issues. And so I think it's just something people can go home and listen to or start their day with. And again, just listen in with KNN, listen in with me, hear the conversation, comment your thoughts. And hopefully it's a podcast that everyone, no matter their background, no matter what sports they like, hopefully it's something they can get behind, rally behind. And I always say, I always want somebody to learn something and have fun. Those are my two goals, to learn something and have fun. So hopefully every podcast episode, I'm doing that job.
You are definitely doing those two things. And at the top of this year, I decided, I'm going to start recommending some podcasts to people aside of the podcast version of this show, which is an hour. The live show is 3 hours. And I fully recommend listening with KNN. She does have some great guests on there. And like I said, last summer, I had the opportunity to be on that program. And at the time we were talking NBA World Championship Series because I had correctly picked Golden State, but incorrectly picked Milwaukee. Toronto came out of nowhere, and not only did they win the East, they won the whole thing. And I showed them a lot of love on the program.
We the North.
Yeah, we the North. How did Mike Breen put it? We the North are now we the champions. And I absolutely love the way he put that. How's the show been going?
The show has been fantastic. I just had Santia Deck on. If people have been following women's football, she's with the newly formed Women's Football League Association, the first multi-million-dollar signee for that football league, which I thought was tremendous. And if you've been following this, you also know that Ja Rule bought the New York team in this league. So I think it's very promising. It's exciting. Of course, I think the biggest show I've had since we talked was when I had LeVar Ball on. And still to this day, that's been my top episode. And it was a controversial episode, yes, because he called some people out. But we just had a good conversation, which was fantastic. I've had MLS stars on. I've had European Soccer League stars on. I had the USA Rugby coach on. I've had Mike Hill on, who, of course, congrats to him, is getting married to Miss Cynthia Daly on the Real Housewives. I mean, it's been so fun. I've had retired players, current players. So it's been everyone, and I really just try to have people on that are doing their thing in sports and just try to get them to share their story.
Yeah, and I'm starting to get that lineup also. I had some friends helping me get some stars for this show. So, folks, beginning in March, when we start covering the NCAA tournament, you'll see that star list kind of go up a couple of notches. But one star that I did have on the show, and we had a great conversation when I had my afternoon program, was Cliff Levingston, former two-time world champion with the Chicago Bulls. Started his career with with Detroit, I beg your pardon. Then he moved to Atlanta, and of course he finished his career with the Bulls. I tell you what, he had me cracking up laughing for a good 20 minutes with some of the questions I asked him.
Those are the best interviews.
And that is one. It's one of my best. I'm going to put it on the website for Snowman Digital Media, and y'all need to check it out. But as soon as I asked him what was one of the worst arenas, and we're talking about the 80s and 90s when he played, as soon as I asked him one of the worst arenas where he didn't want to play, I kind of knew what his answer was, but as soon as he spat out Richfield Coliseum, Richfield, Ohio, I cracked up laughing.
Oh, hilarious!
It's like, and I know, and you've been through this. You kind of get the feeling you know what some of your guests' answers will be, but as soon as they spit them out, you just lose it. You just lose it. And you're like, I knew it. I knew that was going to happen.
Oh, that's too funny. But that's what makes the interview fun.
Yeah.
And it really gives your listeners a chance to dive in and feel a part of the conversation. But that's such a great answer.
It's like I kind of knew it would be Richfield Coliseum Lord knows, being from Chicago, saw Michael Jordan play his entire Chicago career. Didn't you get the feeling when you watched him play against the Cavaliers, he was trying to break their hearts on purpose, and he wound up doing it several times over?
Oh, yes. It was definitely a repeat and something that the Cavs may not forgive for.
May not forgive. I know so many Cavalier
definitely
fans.
Won't forgive
right,
for. There
exactly.
you go. Look, I saw burned jerseys and everything. So we know how that goes. Loyalty in the NBA.
I tease a lot of my Cavalier fans, and I told them, you know what the legacy of the Cavaliers is? And they look at me and they go, uh-oh, he's got a good one. I said, yeah, y'all remember a guy named Craig Elo? And they all start laughing. So what's it like, Ben? What's it like covering my first favorite college basketball team, the Georgetown Hoyas?
Yes, Hoya Sachs. Well, for me, it's a thrill and joy because, of course, I went to grad school at Georgetown.
Right.
And covering Georgetown now, I'm covering Georgetown football and basketball, and I actually will be at the women's game this Sunday when they face off against Villanova. But the men's team, it's been fun. Okay, we're in the Pat Ewing era. All right, we're talking about one and only Pat Ewing. All right, so it's
we're talking about number 33 for Georgetown and for the New York. Patrick Ewing was my first favorite college player, but then Michael Jordan hit a jump shot, and I have been torn since that night in '82 when Jordan hit the game winner because I wanted to see Georgetown win.
Oh,
They did 2 years later, but at the same time, in that game in '82, who knew that we would see so many not only repeat All-Stars but Hall of Famers in that game? Of course, Michael Jordan. Of course, Patrick Ewing.
Yep.
James Worthy, who wound up being the most outstanding player in that game. James Worthy, I still feel to this day, even though he's in the Hall of Fame, is so underrated. But
he is. People don't talk about him enough. And you talked about, just greatness.
Yes. I mean, how can you not mention James Worthy, who a lot of people forget because of Michael Jordan's heroics? James Worthy was the most outstanding player in that game in '82. Yep.
And you talked about it. And this is why, though, when I'm covering that team, and again, having Pat at the helm, I just think of all that history and legacy that he brings with him. And I hope those players understand what they're getting with a guy like Pat. And I'll be honest with you, Georgetown has been great to cover, but of course, unfortunately, that whole sexual harassment, sexual assault case that hit the Georgetown Hoyas basketball team was rough, and I think it kind of changed things a bit. But I really think it showed Pat's leadership. Because he is a player's coach. And I think Pat's also doing a great job at starting to make sure that he recruits local talent, because that had been for a long time a criticism of Georgetown basketball, and it's something here in the DMV. So in the DMV area, we breed ball players, we like to say, be that football and basketball. So University of Maryland coach Mike Loxley just came out and said he's making recruiting local talent a priority of his. Mark Turgeon has said that with the Maryland Terrapins basketball team. And now I think having Pat say that and be that person, I think it's just promising. And, everybody's listening to him for that. But look, Georgetown Hoyas have a solid, good basketball team. Now, are they the old Big East as of late? No. All right. We're not going back to those good Big East games. But it's still fun to watch them and catch them down at Capital One Arena. Mac McClung, if you don't know that name in the Georgetown Hoyas, look him up. So again, young, bright, talented team. I think Pat has his work cut out for him. But it's definitely a fun time.
Capital One Arena will not be the Capitol Center when Patrick Ewing played there, and oh my gosh, I'm starting to get memories now. The battle he had with one Ralph Sampson, that was a nationally televised game. It was only supposed to be on cable, but then all of a sudden, two of the major stations, and like I said, I grew up in Chicago, two of the major stations wound up carrying that game on local television, and we're all sitting in the living room watching this, and we're going, wow. And you hear that place and how loud it is. I'm waiting for the day that Capital One Arena gets that loud when Patrick Ewing leads Georgetown back to prominence.
You both. And look, those are the days we hope for. The Wizards play at Capital One Arena. Wizards games are not loud, all right, folks. I'm just going to be honest with you. Unless a really good team is in town. And I think that's what we've wanted. Look, when I grew up as a kid, when it was back then NCI Center, then it was Verizon Center, now it's Capital One Arena. But back when I was growing up there, I mean, we had some glory days there. I mean, you talk about the Mike Sweetneys of the world, and I mean, just so many great and talented players that came through that Georgetown era. Roy Hilbert, like, just so many big names I can go back to that I remember growing up watching. And then remember when they were playing in McDonough Arena. So I'm talking about Capital One Arena, not for Georgetown, for Wizards games. But when they were playing those games in McDonough Arena, right, before they even got to Capital One Arena, and it was that tight, hot gym, that sweaty gym, standing room only. Oh, my gosh. Some of the best basketball games that I've seen. And that's, of course, where the women play now. And they used to always do at least one game there. They don't really do that now. But just good memories. Good memories. But, I mean, Georgetown has a legacy of basketball, right? It's the Allen Iverson days, right? I mean, just the Dikembe Mutombo days, like just
Rejection Row, Dikembe Mutombo, Alonzo Mourning.
We can talk. So much greatness has come from that. You talked about Alonzo Mourning. Remember his son, Trey Mourning?
Yes.
Actually plays for the Georgetown Boys. So, I mean, just great basketball. But I think Pat is going to try to get them to that level. And because of his background, I think the donors are giving him more time to do that, because it takes time to rebuild a basketball program, folks. It does not happen overnight. And I think he's going to try to do that, because if Georgetown can get to any near type of level they used to be, I'm telling you, fun times in D.C. I'll tell you real quick. The funnest Georgetown games, and we haven't had them scheduled, but when Georgetown played Maryland, and it's kind of a rivalry they're trying to start, that was probably the last time I've heard a Capital One Arena Georgetown game that loud. I don't remember that game. Georgetown always played the Maryland Terrapins.
Yes.
So much fun, that crosstown rivalry. That's the last time I heard a game like just with that much intensity.
I mean, the last time I saw Georgetown get to the Final Four, which of course was 2007, and it was March of 2007. And my dad was watching the game with me, and we both remember watching Patrick Ewing, me growing up and him watching it with me. When they beat, of all teams, North Carolina in the East Regional Final to get to the Final Four, both of us were crying, because we remember that championship game in New Orleans, and then they beat North Carolina in overtime to get to the Final Four, and we look at each other and we're going, it's the glory days again. Georgetown is in the Final Four, and we couldn't believe it. And
an overtime victory.
Yes, it was an overtime victory in East Rutherford, New Jersey, for them to get to the Final Four. I could sit and talk with Kelsey all day about Georgetown basketball, because, like I said, that was my first favorite team growing up. I mentioned, of course, Patrick Ewing started me on that road. Rejection Row with Alonzo Mourning and Dikembe Mutombo. Of course, John Thompson was the leader of that team for many, many years as the head coach. Then John Thompson Jr. And now it circles all the way back around to Patrick Ewing being the head coach. And I'm waiting for the old school Big East to come back again. You mentioned Georgetown and Villanova.
The Big East used to be the thing, right, in college basketball.
Wasn't it?
And of course now ACC pretty much owns college basketball.
Yep.
And the Big Ten, they make a run for it here and there, but the Big East, look, there are no times like the Big East times in college basketball. I mean, it's real gritty, nitty-gritty, tough, hard core basketball. And that's what we want back.
I told my wife, one of the things I would love to do is to see all of my favorite arenas growing up, all of my favorite stadiums growing up. And unfortunately I can't see the Capitol Center. That's gone. But I did get a chance one year to see the Spectrum in Philadelphia, beg your pardon. Yeah. Because Villanova would host all their Big East games at the Spectrum. When it was Syracuse, when it was Georgetown, when it was Seton Hall, especially Georgetown. If Georgetown came to Philadelphia to play Villanova, they weren't playing at the small arena. They were playing at the Spectrum. They wanted a crowd for that game, and you put 18,000 people in there, and they're going to be on their feet for the entire game.
I mean, and that's what it's about. And like you said, I mean, again, I'm not saying the East basketball games are not fun. And I will say, Georgetown still gets a pretty good crowd when they face off against Syracuse. But it's just, It's not the same. It's not the same. And again, being from here and growing up and going to those games, I know what it was like. And so Pat needs time to get to that level.
Yes.
But I think, he's kind of getting there. And if we're talking about college basketball, I don't think they're getting enough notoriety. But the crosstown Maryland and what they've done this season, Mark Turgeon. And again, Maryland's that quiet but really good basketball team. Some are putting Maryland already in their Final Four. And let's also remember, it's been a while since Maryland has hoisted that national championship trophy. Because you go across the border and cross state, UVA had just won it, right? So we're hoping some of that trickles here down the Beltway. And probably most likely we'll go to Maryland, of course, before Georgetown this season. But it's a good time for college basketball here in the DMV.
It is a very good time. And it's also a very good time for y'all to check out Listen In with KNN wherever you listen to podcasts. I was a guest on there. I am a faithful listener. She puts out some great programs, and I want y'all to check it out. This is Kelsey Nicole Nelson joining me here on the program. I thank you so much for coming on, and I'm not going to wait 2 years to have you on. I got to have you back on soon, especially to talk some college hoops as we travel down the road to Atlanta.
Oh, I'd love it. Thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate it. Folks, we got more after this. Told you guys he'd be back, and he's back now to talk some more college hoops as we take a look inside of the Big Ten. This is Scoop Miller, courtesy of Learfield Sports and the Buckeye Cable Sports Network. How are you, my friend?
Hey, fantastic. Great to be here.
All right, let's take a look at the Big Ten, and I'm going to start with the surprise of the Big Ten, a team that is dear to my heart and still has a chance to win the darn thing. Who would have thunk it about the Fighting Illini of Illinois?
Yeah, what a tremendous job for Brad Underwood this year. These guys, they've really done a great job protecting home court. I think they're 12-3 right now at home, but they've won 7 of 10. I know they have a current 3-game losing streak, but they had won 7 row before that. And, they've got a chance to really make some noise, make a dent in this NCAA tournament. There's a lot of people besides yourself back in Illinois certainly excited about this team.
Man, this is a young Illinois team that sent shockwaves throughout the Big Ten, and they did it early in the year when they knocked off Michigan.
Yeah, that certainly was a huge win there. Had to just do wonders for their confidence. Michigan has had so much success, got off to such a great start this year as well. But, the Big Ten, it's been so hard to win on the road. I think this year, going into last night, I think just over 80% of the games have won by the home team there in the Big Ten. So that's something that's certainly been huge. But Illinois has showed they've been able to win away from home as well. I think they have a 4-4 record on the road, which certainly for a Big Ten school is not bad. You'll probably take it most years.
Yeah, you will. They're 12-3 at the State Farm Center, 4-4 away from home. They've lost 3 in a row, but no one. And I'll say it again before we move on to our next point. I'll say it again. No one expected Illinois to make this much noise. 16-8, chance for 20 for the first time in 4 seasons. And a chance to really make some noise in the Big Ten tournament and eventually the big dance in March.
Yeah, I think there's no question. I think in all fairness, they definitely came in under the radar this year, which might have helped them, get some key wins early. But right now, they're certainly on everybody's radar. You're not going to sneak up on Illinois. They're not going to sneak up on you right now. The fact that they've just been playing too consistently, just too well all years. They've proven, this team is not a fluke. This team is a real deal. And certainly they have high aspirations and champagne like they should.
And one team that they beat, that's 1 game behind them, what a win they had over Wisconsin. They took it to them. And that's one of those wins that's a signature win for them. And for Wisconsin, they're 7-6 in the Big Ten, 14-10 overall. But to outline something you talked about not only this time but earlier in the program, Wisconsin's 11-1 at the Kohl Center. The problem is they're 3-6 on the road.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about Wisconsin playing at home? I think since the turn of the century in 2000, their winning record at home there is over 87%, one of the tops in the nation. You know, that's just incredible. I think everybody knows what a rowdy place that is to try to go play. So certainly, Wisconsin's done a great job this year, 11-1 as you mentioned at home. But you know, the Big Ten in general as well has been just unbelievable. The fact that the home team has held service, you know, 80% of the times this year. Even though I think the last couple of weeks we've seen the visitors break through more and more. We saw Purdue get a huge win at Michigan State, at Purdue here recently, and so forth. We've seen some. There just seems to be a lot of parity, I think, across the board. So, you know, you have to win at home, and if you're good enough to pull games out on the road, you're going to put yourself in pretty favorable position come March Madness.
Well, unfortunately, two teams at the bottom of the Big Ten that are not in a favorable position, Nebraska and my other team in the Big Ten, my beloved Northwestern Wildcats, 1-11 in the conference. Is Chris Collins on the hot seat at NU?
Well, I tell you what, it could be. You know, he's been there since the 2013-14 season, and I know they really had high aspirations as he took over. Of course, his dad was always my idol growing up. I'll never forget him hitting those two big free throws against the Russians in the '72 Olympics with a couple seconds left, only to lose on a very, very controversial finish.
Yeah,
one that's stuck in my craw probably as a fifth grader back then. But certainly, you know, the last few years has not been, I think, where they were expecting to be. So, you know, just really, you know, right now 1-11 in the Big Ten. In fact, they're 6-16 overall, and they've just they've had some bad losses at home where they've been really blown out. You know, 20-plus points, and certainly that's not going to sit well with alumni. But you'd love to see him turn it around there. But, you know, right now, them and Nebraska certainly are the doormats of the Big Ten, no question about it.
Yeah, I would love to see Chris Collins turn it around. Duck Collins, of course, is whom he was referring to earlier, hit two big free throws against the Russians. He was also Michael Jordan's coach for the Bulls for 3 seasons, so there's a lot of Chicago lineage there. Let's look in your backyard at Ohio State, 5-7 in the conference, though they're 15-8 overall. Again, let's outline the point you talked about earlier: 11-2 at home, 3-5 on the road. That ain't good.
Yeah, right now Ohio State's kind of one of those bubble teams. You know, there's going to be 4 teams that have to play right away in that Big Ten tournament, and certainly Nebraska, Northwestern are going to be 2 of them. But the other 2 spots are going to be filled probably by either Ohio State, Indiana, or Michigan, 2 of those 3 schools. But I do like Ohio State, not just because I've lived here in the Buckeye State for the last 30 years, but the fact that I think Chris Holtmann gets a lot out of his guys. You know, they play with a lot of energy. They're awfully good at home there. The Schottenstein Center's been really good to them. They're 11-2 this year, but they've had their road woes just like a lot of other teams in the Big Ten. And they went through a stretch there where they just could not buy a win. But the one thing I liked about Ohio State, even through the losses, they typically compete game in, game out. And even in their losses, you know, it's not like they rolled over and they got beat by 20-some points to somebody. You know, these guys usually take it down the wire. They've had a tough time finishing. They've had a couple guys injured, have not played this season. They had another guy that, stepped off for some medical reasons to get his kind of life in order. So, you know, they've got some holes to fill. They're not going to use that as an excuse, but they certainly have a thin bench. And I think that's really kind of made it tough on them. But you have to like the way those guys fight game in, game out. I think somehow they're going to find a way, kind of sneak into that middle tier of the Big Ten. Well, they'll get 1 bye in the Big Ten tournament, but they certainly won't get the 2 byes. Those spots, I think, are going to be reserved for, I'm guessing right now, Maryland, Penn State, Michigan State, and Illinois.
That's the four that's on top right now, and let's look at those top two, Maryland and Penn State. Maryland 20-4, Penn State 19-5. Each of those two teams coming into this week, they've won 7 consecutive games, and Maryland has really taken off at the top of the Big Ten.
Yeah, when you can string together 7 straight wins during the course of the Big Ten season, that's really speaking volumes. And, whoever thought we'd talk about Penn State and Maryland doing that this season here. But what a job Mark Turgeon's done with the Maryland Terrapins, and of course, the job Pat Chambers has done at Penn State there with the Nittany Lions. Those guys are 12-1 at home. Maryland's 14-0 at home, and they've had a lot of success. I really like the way those teams are playing. They've got some quality wins. They're certainly going to have an impressive resume when the NCAA tournament committee decides the brackets for March Madness. So I like those two right there. And then the rest of it kind of gets interesting. You have a Michigan State team that's been up and down and always a dangerous tournament out. And, of course, Iowa's had a tremendous season. And Illinois as well, so it's certainly going to be a dogfight, I think, for those top 4 spots. But right now, I like the Fighting Illini, I like the Spartans, and I like the Nittany Lions, and, of course, I like Maryland.
Those would be the top 4, and I'm really cheering for Illinois to get one of those top 4 seeds in the Big Ten tournament. Let's look at Rutgers. Rutgers 17-7, 8-5 in conference play. And, again, highlighting a point, it's become a theme here of our conversations today. 16-0 in New Jersey,
and 1-5 on the road.
Absolutely.
That's impressive. Anytime I don't care who you are, but if you can hold service at home, especially in the Big Ten, that speaks volumes. So Rutgers certainly is a dangerous team. 17 wins on the season. Those guys have won. The Scarlet Knights have won 11 of the last 15 games, so they're starting to get more and more confidence, I think, as this Big Ten season unwinds. They just have to get that signature win on the road. I think if they can get that, I think that's really going to catapult them. They're certainly one of, I think, it's going to be 11 teams that make the NCAA tournament for the Big Ten.
How about Michigan? Do you think they have a shot at getting in the tournament? The season started so high. Of course, their new coach, Juwan Howard, former Michigan player, alumnus of Michigan, had them playing so well at the beginning of the season, and now you look at them, 5-7 within the conference. They're 14-9 overall. You expected some growing pains, but they were playing over their heads for a really big portion of the season.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Snowman. I think they were. There was so much hype with Juwan Howard taking over this year. You had so many, especially the Cali J students, but a lot of alumni. They were certainly all behind that, and they certainly still are. And those guys got out of the gates. They had some big wins early, and they really had momentum going their way. But they've kind of hit a standstill here, and they're one of those bubble teams. Right now they're really fighting to stay out of that opening round game there in the Big Ten tournament. They're hoping to at least get that one bye, try to sneak in as maybe the number 10 seed or so. But they certainly, that's no guarantee. They're going to have to somehow find a way to finish above Ohio State and Indiana, who both right now have identical 5-7 records in the Big Ten. So certainly, this is a fun time of year because all these games certainly mean a lot down the stretch here, and you're playing really, for your tournament success here. You want to set yourself up to not have to play in that opening round of that Big Ten tournament. So I think the Wolverines have their hands full, but certainly Juwan Howard knows that. He's got some good guys. They just really haven't quite meshed as I think they thought they would after such a great start.
It's the road to Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana, the site of the Big Ten men's basketball tournament from March 11th through 15th. That man was Scoop Miller, giving you all the lowdowns and the highs of the Big Ten. He was on earlier to talk a little action on their road to the conference tournament that's held in Cleveland. Great to have you on, my friend. I certainly hope to have you on more as we take everybody to and through March Madness until a champion is crowned in Atlanta.
Well, Snowman, I always love talking hoops, and it's just, you're right now you're living a dream. You get to go out and watch these games. You get paid to talk about them, and you see some quality basketball, and you see teams and players, fighting to continue to play on. Some of these college seniors are trying to get that W just to keep playing, not only to make the tournament, to keep going to the tournament. And you see guys leave it all out there on the floor each and every night. It doesn't get much better than that. And what a great seat in the house to have. But we've got some great basketball here in the Midwest. With the MAC right in our backyard and the Big Ten, and we've been treated some great games. Got a chance to see Bob Knight come back to Assembly Hall just recently. What a moment there, and IU, kind of a long time coming. It's been a tough ride here for the Hoosiers, but certainly seeing Bob Knight there brought back a lot of great memories for the fine people of Indiana.
Scoop Miller joining me to talk some college hoops. As mentioned, we take you to and through the championship weekend at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Good to talk to you, my friend.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Snowman. Thanks for having me on.
I'm not done yet, folks. We got some more for you in a flash. All right, folks, we continue on with the program, and let's talk a little baseball, shall we? Been meaning to do this for a while, and I welcome the man in charge of Kicking It with Keeler. You can hear that on full press coverage as well as this show. This is Ricky Keeler, and he joins me right now. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm a little mad at the Houston Astros. Did you see that?
Can't say I blame you.
Did you see that so-called apology that they put out there? They called a press conference for it. And
I hope you're using apology in air quotes, but yes, it's an apology. It was awful. It was so predictable.
Yeah, it was.
They go the night before and they like close off the facility. We gotta have this big meeting. Like we're gonna have to plan what we gotta say. And it's one thing to have Dusty Baker up there with Jim Crane, but who are the two players that happen to be on the podium with the owner and the manager? The two players, Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman, who had 6 days after the report to apologize, and they didn't do it.
They did.
So now they're going to apologize again? Like, you don't get a second chance to apologize again. Then they got a third chance in the clubhouse right afterwards. It was such a joke. The closest thing was maybe Correa. Like, I thought, but even Correa's words were like,
scripted.
I get it. He at least mentioned the buzzer, which none of them were even mentioned.
Nope.
It's crazy. Look, baseball didn't, under their rulings, like they could only fine Jim Crane so much. They couldn't do anything with the union. I get that. But they showed their warts. They can't compete with the union. The players can do whatever they want. It's going to be, sadly, up to the players to figure out what they want to do. And there's going to be a lot of brawls. There's going to be a lot of contention when Houston comes on the road this summer. And we'll just have to find out then. I mean, I'm not in favor of those stripping the title just because I can't take back something that exists. You just have to keep it in the forefront. Like, you know what? That title has a little bit to it. It's like a mental asterisk, if you will. But I don't think you can go down that rabbit hole.
No, you can. A lot of fans want to, especially the fan base of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I went in on them earlier in the week. Look, if you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, you got your own issues. You can't complain about a title that you lost on your home field in 2017 and 2018, for that matter, against teams who cheated, and I have to use air quotes for that, even though everything's been proven. But if you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, and we'll start here looking forward to 2020, you got your own issues, especially a failed trade with Jock Peterson, and there's a fellow named Clayton Kershaw that's still walking around.
To your point, especially on 17, the Dodgers lost 2 games at home that year, so it's really tough to give them benefit of the doubt. Now, I do feel bad. If there's a team I feel bad for, it's the Red Sox. And the reason I say that is whatever comes out of this investigation with them and was supposed to be out this week, and it doesn't look like it is. Nobody's going to believe the Red Sox. If they get off something light, people are going to say, no, you didn't look at it hard enough, and then people will find out more about the code break with the Astros. That's besides the point. Looking at the Dodgers this year, I mean, they're going to find some way what to do with Peterson. I mean, he's not a bad player to have still on your roster. If they can get value from him, that's great. But one thing I think I question with the Dodgers, Brian, is their rotation. And it's not really Kershaw exactly. It's after Buehler. Okay, Kershaw has his good moments, has his bad moments. He's getting older. What is David Price going to do in the National League? That remains to be seen. They traded away Kenta Maeda, who was a valuable swingman for them. And their bullpen, Kenley Jansen's getting older, and he's not that reliable. We'll see what Blake Trinan does. We'll see what Gratterall does. Their lineup is great. To me, Yankees-Dodgers is the prohibitive World Series favorite matchup. But when that ever happens in baseball, there's always something that prevents that from happening. I feel like the Dodgers, I just don't know who's going to beat them in the National League, but the Dodgers, I think, are the more vulnerable team than the Yankees.
But the problem I have with the Dodgers and the Yankees, the Cubs, and a couple of others that fall into this line, and I said it earlier this week, the problem is not going to be the lineup. The problem is going to be the pitching. I think for the Yankees, Garrett Cole answers a lot of those questions. When you give him 9 years, $324 million, he's going to take the ball every fifth day. He's going to go 7 innings. It's almost not a guarantee. It's pretty much a guarantee to go 6. So it's going to save the bullpen in a given day, and you trust the Yankee bullpen more than you trust the Dodger bullpen. We'll see what happens with James Paxton's injury. It sounds like he might be back in June. The Yankees don't really need him now. They need him down the line. But having Garrett Cole at least pushes Luis Severino back, and now he's healthy for a full year. Masahiro Tanaka is still, while he's not dominant, he's at least consistent. So you have 4 guys at least that you can depend upon, because Paxton showed a lot in the playoffs, especially in Game 5 last year. I think the Yankees have more depth in their rotation than the Dodgers do, because outside of Walker Buehler, they have question marks. I think Price will be better in the National League, but he still is a guy that he's coming off an injury too. So I think there's more starting pitching questions and bullpen questions on the West Coast than the East Coast with the Yankees. Very, very true with that. And speaking of the East Coast, let's go to the Beltway and look at the world champion Washington Nationals. Only person they lost was Anthony Rendon. And if you look at this Washington lineup, they got stronger as the season got longer, and their pitching rotation, A, is pretty much set, and B, so is their bullpen. And it was the bullpen that rode to the rescue, especially starting with the division series.
Yeah, absolutely. Their bullpen, I think, actually, when you look at it, Brian, they got better. They still have Sean Doolittle. They kept Daniel Hudson. They added Will Harris into the mix, who outside of Game 7 was arguably the Astros' best reliever last year in the postseason. So their bullpen is strong. Their starting rotation is still pretty good with Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin. So and Anibal Sanchez is still there. So you know what you're going to get out of him. The offense, yes, you missed Anthony Rendon. We'll have to see what Carter Kieboom does. He's likely going to be the third baseman, you would think, coming out of camp. But you never know. Then after they have his dribble Cabrera, maybe they can split time. They still have Juan Soto a year older, Victor Robles a year older. The guy I'm interested to seeing what the coaching staff does with is Starlin Castro. Because remember, the Nats a couple of years ago brought in Daniel Murphy, fixed his swing a little bit from the time at the Mets and had a breakout year. I don't know if Starlin Castro had a breakout year, but he can kind of blend in with this lineup. You got Trey Turner. Eric Thames is a good platoon option with Ryan Zimmerman. So their lineup is pretty deep, even though I think they're going to miss Rendon in spots, but they're still right up there in the with the favorites in the National League.
Yeah, they have to be the favorites now. No one expected them to win the World Championship. Talking with Ricky Keeler of Kicking It with Keeler on, you can hear that on FullPressCoverage.com. And I'll tell you what, man, the Nationals, you just said it a moment ago, the Nationals look like the team to beat in the National League. Is there a team or teams outside of the Dodgers that can challenge them? And remember, the Nationals re-signed Howie Kendrick, who was the division series hero, and in essence the World Series hero after we broke the tie in Game 7.
Well, I'll give you 2 teams, and I think they're both in the same division as Washington. because I think the NL East is going to be pretty good. I mean, I like the Reds in the Central. I don't know to win the Central, but I can't really pick them to contend for a title just yet.
Mm-hmm.
The Braves would be one. I like the Braves. We'll see what Cole Hamels' injury is. Hopefully he's not out too long with the shoulder. But they added Will Smith to help their bullpen. They still have a really good young rotation. Another year for Soroka, another year for Fried. They have Fultonewicz. They added Felix Hernandez. We'll see what he gives them now going to the National League, kind of a new uniform. We'll see what that does for him. That lineup is still deep. They added Marcell Ozuna. So when you go 1 through 5 in that lineup, it's still very good. And really, they're trying to come off that Game 5 first inning, which I think is still going. So we'll see what happens if the Braves if the Braves can turn that around. The other team kind of
it just seemed, folks, people know I love Bugs Bunny and I love Looney Tunes. There's a cartoon called Baseball Bugs that before Bugs Bunny rode to the rescue, it was just a conga line around the bases. That's what it felt like in Game 5 in Atlanta, didn't it?
It did. I was actually, I think I was out for a part of that game. I look at my scoreboard on my phone. I'm like, wait, it's 10-0. I said, is that a glitch or something? I'm like, is it really 10-0?
I was out also, and I looked at my phone, and I said, what the hell? And my wife says, what? I said, it's 10-0 in the first inning, and my wife tells me she's not a big baseball fan. She's not, okay? She's not a fan of baseball at all. But when I said 10-0 in the first inning, she grabbed my phone, took a look at it, and went, wow, somebody's a little pissed off. I'm like, yeah, you think? 10 runs in the first inning?
I still say the Braves should have gave them their parking money back, but that's besides the point.
They should have gave them their money for admission back. That was a game that was played. Wait a minute. That was a game that was played in the afternoon.
I give them the parking back.
Right. I'll give you that. That was a game that if you go back to the 80s, that's one of those that you play in the afternoons. Everybody is still at work, and then everybody comes home and goes, what the hell happened?
He helped him. They add Keuchel. Yep. They add Gio Gonzalez, who I think is a good back-end guy, and that lineup is really, really good.
Yeah,
they add Nazar. We'll see what Luis Robert does. Grandal's there now. Encarnacion. So a lot of parrots on the south side, which is going to be pretty cool. I think we're going to see a lot of flying parrots.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot. We're going to see a lot of walking parrots, and I love it. We're going to see a lot of walking parrots.
Hey, I love the parrot.
So
that's my guy right there. But you got Moncada looking like he's breaking out. I mean, what's Cleveland? I think that's the question. Minnesota right now looks like they're the favorite in the Central.
Yes.
But you have to figure out the Indians just find pitchers out of nowhere, and they can get rid of Kluber and probably still have a good starting rotation.
Yeah.
So it's really between the White Sox and Indians for second.
Yeah, I see that too. How about the American League West? How does that go?
I got to think it's the Astros right now. Even though they made no moves this winter, they still have Verlander. Their lineup is still really good. If they can get over that initial hump early on, if they get off to a hot start,
it's
the
over.
Thing is, and now you add it's over. You add Urquidy, you have for a full year now, so that helps their rotation a little bit. And I think the second place team, I want to say the Angels, Brian, but they have no pitching. They really have no. Could they have taken some of Mike Trout's money and given it to like a pitcher or something?
Yes,
I feel bad for Mike Trout. They got Rendon. What's Shohei Ohtani? Is he a pitcher? He's a hitter? I don't know. One week he's going to be a pitcher in May, but a hitter in April. They really don't have a solution with the Angels right now.
No.
So I don't know how much Madden's going to help. Oakland's still pretty good, but there's always a ceiling with the A's, and they got to rely a lot on young guys like AJ Puck and Jesus Luzardo, who are very talented.
Yeah.
But when you're top of the guys, Manaea, who had a shortened year last year because of injury, your rotation's a little in doubt, and then Melvin's going to use a lot of the bullpen. But the A's always seem to hang around sometimes.
Yeah. Can Seattle be competitive, at least for a little while? Can the Mariners actually be competitive?
Do you mean competitive in the regular season or competitive at the trade deadline, since Dakota loves to trade everybody?
All right. Let me flip a coin. Both.
Competitive at the trade deadline. Honestly, Brian, I think Texas is better. If you're going to go for a surprise in the West, I go the Rangers. Their rotation actually wasn't that bad last year.
Right.
with Lance Lynn and a couple of guys there. Their lineup is still pretty good. They lost Nazar in that trade, but the Rangers still have Joey Gallo healthy. They're going to a new ballpark. It's not going to be as hot all the time, so maybe they'll pitch a little bit better. You look at that team, Todd Frazier's in there as a veteran. They have Kluber now in the mix there. If he's healthy, maybe he gets a boost. So honestly, I would take the Rangers before I take Seattle.
Yeah. I got a lot of thoughts in my head about
Seattle's young, though. I'm interested. The Mariners have a lot of young pieces. I just don't know how far they like.
Yeah, I don't know how far. I don't know how fast they can put them together. That's one of my
They're still
questions.
like 2-3. They're 3 years away in the West, especially with Houston going.
Yeah, it's Houston's division to lose. That's how I look at it. Ricky Keeler, Kicking It with Keeler, joining the Snowman here, and I want to thank you for coming on, and I'd love to have you on to help do some baseball previews.
I'm happy to be on, Snowman. Thanks for having me.
We got more for you after this. All right, folks, there's a young man that I have not had on the show in over a week, and now that the season has concluded, I get to have him on again because we kind of missed a connection. Mike DeBate joins me, and Mike, have you got your ears on, my friend?
Always for you, my friend. I've got my ears on. I'm locked and loaded and ready to go. Been a long time since we've spoken, but all good, and I always love coming on. Thank you for having me on, Brian.
Man, I love having you on. This is Mike DeBate of Full Press Coverage. Of course, he joins me to talk NFL. The season is concluded. Chiefs and the 49ers. Let's start with the world champion Chiefs. They 21 points in 6 minutes. Nothing but praise for both of these teams, and one hell of a Super Bowl that they put on.
Yeah, tremendous game for both teams, if you think about it. When you look at it, 49ers definitely had their chances. The Chiefs, credit them. Tip your cap to both teams. Patrick Mahomes definitely showed that he is among, if not atop, of the elite quarterbacks in this league. Can't say enough about the game that he had. Damian Williams, as a running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, was phenomenal in this game. You can make the argument that he could have been considered for the MVP along with Mahomes. I don't think they necessarily made a bad decision by giving it to Patrick, but Williams, I thought, had a tremendous game as well. Got to credit the Kansas City defense. They made stops when they needed to. I thought on the San Francisco side, I thought they played very well on defense, well enough to win this. Just unfortunately, it came down to Kansas City making more plays than San Francisco did in the latter part of the game. So a great Super Bowl, great victory for the Chiefs. But if you're a Niners fan, fear not. This team's going to be back, and they're going to be ready to go in 2020.
And don't be surprised. And I said this right after the game. You know, I went to bed, and my wife said, did the 49ers win? I said, nope, the Chiefs did. And she looked at me, and she had that smile. And before I could say anything, she spits out, don't be surprised if these two have a repeat performance in 2020 when we're in Tampa. And I say the same thing. Don't be surprised if these two go at it again 1 year from now.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. You take a look at the way these two teams are constituted, the way they're built. They have the better part of their course coming back. Very few off-season questions for either one of these teams. So you look at it, they're primed for another repeat performance. Of course, me being up here in New England, I hope that one other player is playing maybe a game in Tampa. Let's make the hope. You can't make the assumption that guy's coming back. I love to believe he will be, but in actuality, no. I think you look at these two teams, and right now they have to be the favorites in their two conferences simply because of the fact that they're the two hottest teams right now. And like I said, there are very few off-season questions for the Chiefs and for the 49ers. So if they can keep that core intact, and by all accounts they should, these two teams seem to be on a collision course once again. Let's take a look inside of the rumor mill, and I heard something that got my ears peaked, and it got my attention peaked. It concerns wide receiver A.J. Green. Of course, now with the Cincinnati Bengals, there's a rumor flying around right now that A.J. Green may change his Bengals stripes for Gold Rush stripes.
there's a lot of people saying right now that the favorite to land A.J. Green resides in the Bay. Can you imagine how dangerous that receiver core will be if A.J. Green does indeed wind up signing with San Francisco?
It will be, and that's a very interesting spot for him. I did hear the same rumors, and I've heard a lot of rumblings about, of course, up here in New England, a lot of people seem to think that he's rumored to the Patriots an awful